It's a 2 QB mock draft here at Establish the Run. Myself, John Daigle, and Roto World's Pat Daugherty and Kyle Dvorak. Roto Pat, you are taking the end of the draft as I Josh Allen 101.
I am, and should I just double tap quarterback? Really, the only rule in 2 QB that matters is that QB early, QB often, QB late. We're going to start off with 7 straight quarterbacks, and then, of course, try to trade them, an approach that always works. No. But do you guys agree? I mean, do you always go – I think a 1-1 in 2 QB leagues, you definitely have to go quarterback. Where do you think actually should you start scooping up like the Saquon Barkley and like Justin Jefferson values? I feel like at the turn, I have to come away with one quarterback when it's going to be 23 picks, whatever between my second and third picks. But one of your viewers is already starting to stop the slide of the skill players. I never know where you should start trying to get the 9 QB values, though.
Yeah, for me, at least this year, it's going to be different every year. But at the start of the draft this year, I think there's a clear tier of 4 where, like, look, Jamar Chase is awesome, but I do think when you are forced, not that you have the option to start a second QB, when you are forced to, I'm probably still taking him after Daniels and Hurts. And at that point, I think it does become really murky. Like, Christian McCaffrey could be the best fantasy asset on the planet, even in Superflex, and we've got all the elite quarterbacks off the board. Totally fine having that conversation. Same with like Gibbs, Bijan Robinson, who go next, like the wide receivers as well. But to me, like I love Chase. I would still be going at least for the first 4 picks, unquestioned one of the elites.
Well, you've got the choice here now. Burrow, or do you take the tight end one, Brock Bowers?
I should also mention, Kyle, as you think over your pick, 12 teams, full PPR, 2 wide receivers, 2 flex. Perhaps it's different at the end of drafts that you want to go a wide receiver over one of the second-tier quarterbacks if it were 3 starting wide receivers. But with your pick, again, 2 wide receivers, 2 flexes.
Well, Kyle, I just said that in a 2 QB league, you'll never catch me not taking a QB at 1 or 2. I can't take these guys. I can't even, not even my guy, Mahomes. Actually, maybe I'll talk myself into Mahomes in a minute. I think I'm just going to double tap. I might honestly double tap wide receiver here with Malik Neighbors and Amon-Ra St. Brown. I'm not sure I'm ready to get on the first round pick Genty train. McCaffrey, the German stem cell train. Not sure that's really what I would be hitching my wagon to. I'm taking the top 2 receivers. I'm taking Neighbors and ARSB. And
yeah, Pat, I kind of knew what you were going to do there if I went Burrow, because you did the thing I would have done is like, there is a weird, like 1 tier of quarterback where it's like Burrow is clearly better than Mahomes. He's clearly better than Fields or Kyler Murray, whoever you want to put in that next spot. He's also clearly not as good as Jalen Hurts. I wouldn't take him 5, but I was like, I am 100% locked in to no quarterbacks through 2 rounds if I go Burrow here. Because I also agree that like I wouldn't have taken Mahomes in your spot. I'm not taking him in my spot. So that made my decision for me, is like knowing what you were going to do and knowing how that would impact me. There's a very flat tier of guys right here. Perfectly fine taking Puka. If you would have left me Amon-Ra, I would have been happy. BTJ.
Yeah, you knew that Burrow was not going to make it back to you. And
yes,
John, I feel like a quarterback, there's the breakaway tier at the top of the big 4. Then, as Kyle has alluded to, there's a second one-man tier with Burrow, and then it's kind of everyone for themselves. Will Mahomes finally bounce back? Will Bo Nix level up? Will Drake May level up? Not that he's in that tier yet. But there's the breakaway tier, then there's Burrow, then there's everybody else.
And I think that's what everyone is thinking when they watch something like this, a 2 quarterback mock, is when should they break away? And the answer was different before the pandemic, before Josh Allen, before Jalen Hurts, because then we could actually match these wide receivers, early running backs with the strong tight ends, because the production was replicable with late round quarterback. Our friends JG Zacharias and Rich Rebar with the Konami code, they built their brands on that action. But then the rushing quarterbacks, the elite passing ceilings come along. So I do think the top 4 are strong. But after that, the Joe Burrow argument, in my opinion, as the second tier, that's the same argument people made for CJ Stroud. And I am always concerned when the quarterback with no rushing floor is heightened to elite capital, even in a format like this. Like, yes, there's something to say about Joe Burrow having 40 pass attempts per game, and then do the projections of the wide receivers in the range that y'all took, do those wide receivers match that? Are they more important? Are they as predictable? And so I think that's a fair question that I'm asking myself, since Patrick Mahomes, who, yes, has been the QB 13, QB 14 in points per game the last 2 years, despite being an alien. He's the only guy, not Burrow. He's the only one who has like waded through Lamar Jackson, Jalen Hurts, Josh Allen, and come out as a QB1 because, again, he's an alien. And so I am questioning Burrow's status like at that QB2 in this type of format. Perhaps I do, like you did, Pat, double tap wide receiver, take a strong hero running back approach, and then come back around and go quarterback. We will see who's left on the board for you when it comes back to you.
It is definitely fair to question Burrow this year, where everything broke right for that elite fantasy campaign last year. Awful defense. Had to be, the whole team had to be placed on his shoulders. That formula is still kind of in place.
I was going to say, well, surely they're returning their best pass rusher. He's got to be out there making a lot of money, I would assume, too.
But I will say, too, with your point on Mahomes, we know Mahomes' ceiling is the greatest quarterback season in the history of the league, since he's basically already done that. He almost did it a second time. And yeah, maybe we haven't been questioning. Like, it's just a article of faith. Burrow ahead of Mahomes this year. We have not been questioning that orthodoxy at all, and maybe we should be.
It also comes down to supply and demand, and the demand is obviously higher in a 2-quarterback or super flex league. And so we are then asking ourselves, what is the next tier of players, as we talked about with Joe Burrow? But honestly, we can include Joe Burrow in this. You can go to the next group of guys. But from Patrick Mahomes, Bo Nix, Baker Mayfield, whomever everyone thinks the QB6 is, like my argument would be Kyler Murray or Justin Fields, but I get if no one wants to go there. But that guy compared to, let's say, CJ Stroud or Jordan Love as the QB 18, QB 19, when just last year they were being drafted that QB 6 range, to me, that's as flat as it comes. And so that's why I instead want to pick apart running backs, wide receivers, Trey McBride, George Kittle in this range of QB2, because again, you cannot tell me the difference between Brock Purdy and CJ Stroud. Both could easily finish in that top 8 range.
Jacob, your audience, perhaps unsurprisingly, very informed ETR audience. They're being quarterback hipsters. We had this huge debate, and then just no one went after Burrow, even in a 2-quarterback league. Kyler Murray finally went in the 3rd round, but they're being quarterback hipsters.
And I like that it's going this direction because, again, as a product of supply and demand in 2-quarterback formats, you can then also tell yourself, well, maybe this gives me a chance then to draft a strong quarterback too, if that's the way you want to go. I will be handling that 3rd tier, as I talked about, though, which is a big grouping. I'll be handling it personally just the way the room's going to handle it, understanding that I don't mind waiting for sure until the later rounds, since even the Jackson Darts, Geno Smiths, Tyler Shucks of the world, like we can predict when they start. We know when they're going to start, unlike the players being drafted in their range. We can talk about that more when they come along. But again, remember, those 30-plus pass attempts, those predictable starts, that is more important than probably the streaming running backs and wide receivers that are eventually going to be drafted around, as Kyle, you are now on the clock.
I know what Kyle's going to do. Oh, thank God he didn't do it. I thought you were going to take Amari and Hampton.
Oh no! I thought
so. Shocked that you didn't.
I thought you would take Brees over Hampton, and I would get Hampton back.
I'm trying to decide if I can possibly skip quarterback here.
Yeah, I think the big reason I went Burrow with the first is I agree.
Possibly can. I just did. Going against literally everything I've ever.
It's a good test case. People don't need to watch mock drafts and videos looking at the player rankings. They need to look at the ranges and see what happens if you do something wrong. For instance, Pat, if you don't take a quarterback in the first 4 rounds, because that's going to be a live action that people will have to make in their superflex and 2-quarterback drafts, then what does it look like when it comes back to you? And we're going to find that out live.
We're going to find out the hard way.
Yes.
Yeah, we are stress testing this.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Live.
Yeah, Pat kind of played me like a fiddle. I thought he'd go 1 quarterback there, and I would get one of the running backs that I wanted.
I just couldn't. Kyle is like, am I gonna really tear jump with Dak Prescott? Am I gonna really bet on a Jordan Love bounce back? Am I gonna bet on the Drake May level up? I just didn't feel comfortable. I felt more comfortable just getting 2 elite running backs, at least by ADP.
That's what I wanted to do. I wanted to get one of those elite running backs too, because part of why I took Burrow was like, I think there's a gap between 5 and 6 as quarterback, and then there's like no gap, as Daigle pointed out, between 6 and like 16 or something. Like any of these guys could be the QB7. Some of them have better odds, but they're all very much in that mix. And I wanted to go anything other than quarterback in the third and fourth round, because I just did not see the difference as much. Like, there are small differences, but it wasn't worth taking one of them being, oh, let's get the top of the tier. I want to get the last two guys in that tier. And I ended up just being pigeonholed and taking a quarterback that I didn't have any conviction in, because you took both the running backs, one of whom I really wanted.
Pat, you took Omarion Hampton, and what I think is his floor, I think this is probably he'll be drafted among those running backs, Jonathan Taylor, Chase Brown, Josh Jacobs, Kyron Williams, in home leagues. But if everyone's about to show up here in the next couple of weeks to their home leagues and have to decide when to draft Omarion Hampton based on this ominous Naji Harris eye injury, how are you handling it? How high are you personally willing to go?
Well, before the Najee I thing, I think his ADP was in like the RB 13 or 14 range, which, to be honest, I thought he's being drafted more at his ceiling than floor. And I think the big change with the Najee injury has been that it took that ADP from being very aspirational to, I just feel like, very level-headed. Like, that really is his floor, as you just said. And I think that has been the big takeaway, the big change for the Najee thing. I really believed he was being drafted at his ceiling. Like, I don't know, man. Like, they gave Najee $5 million. They employed a strict two-man backfield last year. It is Jim Harbaugh. He might make the rookie earn his oats or whatever. But I just think now that it's much, much more his floor, because Najee's doing conditioning drills. Like, that's the best case scenario right now. Like, oh, he's almost back out there. He's just doing conditioning. No updates at all in his stat. And I think we kept saying on our show over the summer, Najee's best case scenario, where he needed to not give Omarion Hampton any runway. Najee needed to show up day one, be ready to go, be out there claiming his role. And not only did he give Omarion Hampton like a small opening, he gave him like the biggest opening we've seen in recent memory. Like, this is a wide opening, like to like land the plane on the highway, basically. And I don't even know what that means, by the way. But I love Omarion Hampton now. I thought he was kind of a riskier bet as the RB 14 before. Now I think he's honestly fairly safe in that RB 12 to 14 range.
Any extended thoughts there, Kyle, on where you are taking Omarion Hampton? Because he is a player I want to be ahead of, and do think, like Chase Brown, honestly, he should be drafted alongside Jonathan Taylor, if not ahead of him.
Yeah, looking at the board, like, I've started taking him ahead of Breece Hall. We're getting a ton of drumbeat on Braylon Allen being a legitimate threat to his workload. I still think Breece Hall is really good, and he has a strong floor as a pass catcher. But this is a team that doesn't project to score a lot of touchdowns, and now there's a between the tackles competition from a big physical running back who could be used at the goal line. Like, give me Hampton over him. Kyron Williams, like, I think the floor for Omarion Hampton, if Naji Harris is not a large part of the offense, is very similar to Kyron. Where, like, Hampton wasn't a Gentee level runner in college, but man, he was a workhorse in terms of getting all of his team's carries and getting a ton of pass catches out of the backfield, even if I don't think he's a special pass catching running back. Kyron Williams is not special as a pass catcher, but the team trusts him in pass pro, trusts him on third downs, and he gets out there and gets to catch passes, even if he's nowhere near as good as other players who catch as many passes as him. And that's kind of the floor, is he gets all of the work for Omarion Hampton. And the ceiling is that he gets all of the work and is special. So I would take him over Kyron. I would take him over Breece. I think Jacobs is probably like what you think a good outcome, or like a slightly above average outcome, looks like for Omarion Hampton. So I think coin flip him with Jacobs for me, but I still think he doesn't go quite that high in drafts right now. Like you said, someone I want to be at least a step ahead of on, like, probably for the rest of the summer. I can't imagine the field gets ahead of me in terms of how excited they are for Hampton.
I discussed the flatter tier of that QB3, QB4, and who can finish as a top 10 guy. I took Dak Prescott, and I think that's going to be a decision point for a lot of people, not Prescott in particular, but when it comes back to the front of drafts in a 2QB superflex format, then asking yourself, how far can I push this? Pat, for example, you pushed it, and we're about to find out, but
only 40 picks to go.
I nitpicked my player and said, I personally like Dak Prescott. I don't want to push it to where my QB 2-3, and I don't even know if this is the right answer, honestly, but I don't want to push it where my QB 2-3 is a jumble of Penix, who I still like, Cam Ward, or Bryce Young. I'm going to take Dak, who at least we know in 2023, the QB5 in points per game, finished number 2 in MVP voting behind Lamar Jackson. Showed us he does have a ceiling that is knocked down strictly for recency bias. But again, we will decide when that time comes. Kyle, I took Devontae Adams, you took Puka Nacua, and Nacua could be drafted. Some people could argue over CeeDee Lamb, over Malik Neighbors, over Amon-Ra St. Brown. Are you concerned about the Matthew Stafford back injury during the training camp?
Yeah, like I'm sweating bullets if I'm being honest, but also who cares? Like grow up, be an adult, and draft maybe like the best young talent we've seen come into the NFL since the Justin Jefferson Jamar Chase duo. Like that is, I mean, that's if you just look at per game or per route. I mean, frankly, if you look at per route, he's cleared both of those somewhat easily. But if you just look at per game stats through 2 seasons or through X games, like this is what a true superstar in the vein of Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson look like. And if I'm worried about like famously always dealing with chronic something issues, Matthew Stafford being the problem, like you're just playing too scared.
Daigle, I'll be honest, I really wanted Dak. Dak was if I was going to take a quarterback instead of Amari and Brees, it was Dak.
Recency bias. And you came so close.
Recency bias was the phrase, is the operative phrase. Elite QB1 2 years ago. I mean, I think he could lead the league in passing attempts this year. There's kind of really no reason. Oh man, nope. Jordan Love just went. That's going to be a big problem for me.
And I would imagine these are established run subscribers because the early bird special is still going on. By the time people are watching this, they can go to establishthерun.com and look at the early pricing right now. But because of the subscribers, I would imagine in a regular home league, quarterbacks could go earlier than this. And so probably,
sure,
Pat, in that 4th round in another format, another type of league in your home league, again, you're just going to watch the room. But I bet you take a quarterback in the 4th round in another format.
And I just took them in the 5th and 6th round here, by the way. I double tapped the worst quarterback duo imaginable of Trevor Lawrence and Tua Tagovailoa, where Trevor, I mean, the bet's obvious, betting on a Liam Cohen bounce. Tua, I'm just praying for 17 games of health, where they're really playing like that 2012, 2015 Peyton Manning Broncos offense, and I'm hoping for the poor man's version of that, where it's 43 attempts per game. He completes 30 to 31 of them. He's always throwing for 280 to 290 yards. He's typically getting at least 2 touchdowns. He's sometimes getting 4 touchdowns, but it's a very shaky bet. But, waiting as long as quarterback as I did, I'm not like devastated with Tua as my QB2 outcome since I'm so strong at receiver and running back, hopefully. But it would not be how I draw it up in a 2-quarterback league.
In a 2-quarterback format as well, Kyle, I bet in a home league you can cross your fingers if you were to push it and go other positions with your first 4 picks at the end. I bet you could cross your fingers that one of CJ Stroud or Jordan Love come back. And that's a bet I want to make since I expect both of those offenses to look entirely different.
Daigle, I made the Love bet. That was the bet I was really making.
Yeah.
And again, I feel like with your pick, you clipped one of the 2 at the end of the tier. I mean, truly, with the Trevor Lawrence, CJ Stroud, Jordan Love tier, you were expecting massive situational bounce backs from all of them. And they're all players who, like, we think have the physical talents to be strong fantasy assets. And some of their cases, like I think Trevor Lawrence does. Frankly, I know Jordan Love does. Like he's an absolute baller. I think he's the most talented of all those 3. But all of them are getting meaningful upgrades in terms of both surrounding talent in terms of pass catchers, but also in what we expect the team to be doing on offense, whether it be head coaching or whether it be Love being hopefully we can get healthy for 17 games, because their run heavy approach to me was a very clear signal they were protecting him because of his health. All 3 of those guys, I think, are very strong bets to bounce back this year. Tua is just clearly just a bet on health. And I guess you also do kind of need the offense to bounce back, or at least be a more fun version of it was last year. Pat, if you had gotten 2 out of that tier, if you had gotten Stroud Lawrence, Love Stroud, or Lawrence Love, that would have been awesome. Having Tua as the QB2, I think, is where that fell slightly short, because you did make the Love bet. I think it would have worked in like a home league or something.
Love Lawrence, I would have loved. I really do not know what to expect from CJ Stroud this year. Where there are concerning sophomore seasons, and then there's whatever that was. Where that I think PFF Bobby deserves a lot of the blame for whatever that was. Where when things went south, there were no creative solutions. He just had nothing. There was no option B for that offense. But boy, I mean, so much of that has to be on the player. He was totally overwhelmed by. He faced adversity for the first time in his career, and did not handle it. Not only did not handle it well, he handled it basically about as poorly as humanly possible.
But this is also why at the back you can push for quarterback, because what happened is, again, we use the word recency bias, that Baker Mayfield and Jared Goff, Bo Nix, those guys, since it's all a opportunity cost game, those guys just replaced Dak Prescott, CJ Stroud, and Jordan Love in the top 12.
Great point.
Bo Nix was an amazing pick, practically undrafted or outside the top 24 quarterbacks in Superflex leagues, 2 quarterback drafts last year. Now I would argue he's a miserable pick because not only was his rushing inconsistent to close the year, it was also against an easier schedule, and he's being treated as a top 12 quarterback. So again, opportunity cost. We're just making a different argument. In terms for CJ Stroud individually, though, I do love to back the Texans. I think they improved everything. You mentioned Bobby Slowick now being removed. Nick Caley, who comes over from Los Angeles, it might not be the same offense that he learned under Sean McVay, but at least we saw Bobby Slowick the last 2 years, and I mentioned this on past shows, the Texans averaged third and 7.5 yards to go. Like, all they did, like Zach Taylor and Joe Burrow, they did not help their offense, but their quarterback is a superhero, and he got them through that as a rookie. Now, though, with Caley and the Rams, which Matthew Stafford, the Rams didn't average even 7 yards to go on third down at any point with Stafford because they are just a better run offense that understands moving the chains, and downs are important. Not to mention the Texans adding 4 new offensive linemen, shuffling up their trenches. So I like Stroud. I like Nico Collins to emerge as a top 5 wide receiver. I like Christian Kirk as a late round PPR guy that everyone's forgetting about because they are obsessed with the rookies. Dude, I think the Texans offense is going to be fun as hell.
Did you just see what Kyle did, by the way?
I am now seeing it, yes. And Kyle, go ahead and discuss it, because there is a point where Anthony Richardson is absolutely draftable. Again, a player who was a top 8 quarterback in ADP last year, now being left for dead. And you just look at the players going around him, like Anthony Richardson or RJ Harvey, for example. Like, that's the argument now we're making. So go ahead and talk about Anthony Richardson.
Yeah, I mean, the bet, I think, early in the offseason, once they signed Daniel Jones, always appeared extremely weak because Daniel Jones, while not good, is enough of a competition for a coaching staff who is on their last legs to be won. Like, if you need to not lose games hilariously, it makes some sense to play Daniel Jones over Anthony Richardson. And then the shoulder issue comes up and you're like, oh man, it is over. And then the moment they get into training camp, they're like, oh, Daniel Jones, not nearly as fun as we thought it'd be. Honestly, not sure what we were thinking with that move. Ant has looked really good in our padded practices. And of course, it's going to be inconsistent. We will inevitably get reports like this was a bad day for Anthony Richardson. But once the bet has, I think it has, shifted back to the favor of Anthony Richardson, who ultimately that's what this franchise is headed for, is either Anthony Richardson is the future or they reset once again. Daniel Jones has no impact on the team's future bearings other than coasting them to a losing record and a good draft pick, not embarrassing the team. Maybe it helps the coaching staff keep their jobs, but he really has no future with the team. Now that we're getting back to, it looks like Anthony Richardson is going to start in week 1. He is a week in, week out QB1 based on the rushing production alone. And he could improve as a passer. He's played like 20 career starts since entering the NFL and had 1 season as a starter in college. Yeah. Like, there's a potential for him to improve as a passer, and he is a locked-in QB1 as a rusher alone. And now we're back to resetting him seemingly as the favorite to be the week 1 starter. Not locked in, but 75% to be the week 1 starter. This is the type of player, especially in manage, where if he does get benched, it doesn't string zeros together in your lineup for the rest of the season. You can just cut him and replace him with some waiver wire streamer. This is the perfect managed and 2 QB bet.
We have not discussed yet the tight ends. And Brock Bowers usually goes into first, second round. Trey McBride, George Kittle, a round or 2 later in that order. But I think the point is Sam Laporta here, everyone sees goes in the 5th round, TJ Hawkinson much later, Pat. And I think that's because the argument I've been making, unprofessionally, I say they're all the same guy from Sam Laporta on. Literally, you tell me the difference between Sam Laporta and Hunter Henry in fantasy football, you cannot make an argument. But the professional way to frame it is that it's a flat tier. And that's why I think really Laporta's, Hawkinson's ADP should come down rather than thinking we need to rush to get that tight end after the big three are off the board.
You also just don't need to rush this year because the tight end position has finally been replenished where there's a pretty solid crop and tier of guys in their prime. There's been a lot of young guys who have come in and just really shored up what the past year or two, tight end was basically as thin as it's ever been. Where you're now getting for that tight end 12 to 20 range, there's a lot of guys who could just produce random tight end one seasons. I mean, Dalton Kincaid, Tucker Kraft, even Jake Ferguson, who just didn't score a touchdown last year, would have been a pretty solid tight end one if he had scored 3 or 4 touchdowns. I mean, even Kyle Pitts, even Dallas Goedert, even the injured Isaiah Likely. I just feel like there is no reason to rush a tight end pick, to use your word, if you miss out on the big three. And it's just, I think it's a really, really great year to take 2 later round tight ends. That's honestly always my preferred approach, is betting that I can take 2 guys. One of them will jump into the top 10 or 11 at least. Maybe they'll jump into the top 5 or 6. Yeah, there's never been a better year if you do not get Brock Bowers, if you do not get George Kittle, if you do not get Trey McBride, to just treat tight end as what it is, the least important position in fantasy football.
Your thoughts, Kyle, on tight end, as you also took McBride as he fell a round later than Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I think you made the point really well. And the history of tight end as we know it entirely backs up the idea that a lot of years, if there's a truly elite tight end or 2 or sometimes even 3, they are consistently good picks because at tight end, like the top end of the talent is functionally just you're a really good wide receiver. You also have attributes as a blocker for fantasy purposes. We don't care about that. But Brock Bowers went like bar for bar in terms of rookie season production with guys like Ladd McConkey, with guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. He just is an incredible wide receiver in the way that like Travis Kelce's peak was, for fantasy purposes, incredible wide receiver. Top end of the tight ends, once we know you have hit that status, comfortable taking you as an elite. If you haven't hit that status, this is the point you were making. If you haven't hit that status, what is the difference between any of you? Any of you can have the random 10 touchdown season. Any of you can randomly jump up like Jake Ferguson did 2 years ago and be like, I guess he's just the Cowboys' number 2 wide receiver this season. And I don't think there's a strong reason to bet on any one of them to be that. The reasons we make our bets there is because they're the cheapest. Like Dallas Goedert is extremely efficient, but when the team doesn't pass the football, he doesn't score fantasy points. When their defense gets worse, like it did 2 years ago, he actually has chances on a per game basis to score a lot of fantasy points. The argument for Jake Ferguson 2 years ago was like, heck, he's their number 2 receiver. Now we're getting cheap prices on like really interesting talents, like Pat pointed out, with like Kyle Pitts is not a fun click, but he did have a really good rookie season, and now we only have to pay for the fact that he's running routes. We don't have to pay for any of what we think is maybe a little bit of talent. Dalton Kincaid, again, I kind of thought he was a reach going in the first round, and through the first 2 years of his career, that seems more or less accurate, and now he's not being drafted as a tight end 1. You don't have to pay a starting tight end price for him, and if it was ever going to happen, for most tight ends, it's not their rookie or even their second year. We've been treated with guys like Sam Laporta and Brock Bowers to early career breakouts. That shouldn't be the standard for all of them. So would it be shocking if Dalton Kincaid finally puts it together this year? No. In fact, like going into his career, year 2 or 3 should have been the median breakout year, not it's disappointing to hit that. So to me, I think you put it really well. I like the elite tight ends, but as soon as that cutoff hits, I want to be very judicious with how I spend my draft capital.
In a one tight end format like this one, it's different because ADP is entirely different in a 2 QB draft. But I am pushing back personally against Brock Bowers just because, as you said, he matches the likes of Ladd McConkey. But if he's drafted around this range, I think the question we should be asking is, does he separate from Trey McBride and George Kittle? Does he truly separate? Otherwise, you get a full round discount on someone who can match Brock Bowers' production at a volatile position. And so that's why I personally prefer waiting for McBride and Kittle, thinking that Bowers will not still be very good, amazing, but won't separate to the point where I can't have that Bucky Irving, Devon Achane, Amon-Ra St. Brown, all those guys in his range in this draft in particular.
Yeah, to me, it's like a very clear bet to separate. Like, he went bar for bar with Trey McBride as a rookie, and Trey McBride was in his 3rd year. We're projecting guys like Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr. I mean, we're taking them at the 1-2 turn off of years that look similar to what we got from, extremely similar to Brock Bowers last year. Like, if you told me Malik Neighbors went bar for bar with Jamar Chase as a rookie, I'd be like, he's the greatest wide receiver of all time. He can separate from anyone. And now we're getting Brock Bowers was the tight end 1 easily as a rookie. If he takes the next step, like we project young players to take the next step at all, like every single time we get the chance to do so. If he does take the next step, it goes from him being the tight end 1 with some space between him and Trey McBride to the greatest tight end of all time.
What if he just had his career year as a rookie, though? Which does happen.
I mean, like,
well,
you can make that
I
argument for
change
anyone.
all that too. I don't believe that.
What if Trey McBride scores more touchdowns? That's all it is. That's
what
the
if
argument.
the sun friggin' explodes?
Yeah, but Trey McBride scores more touchdowns and Brock Bowers makes no progress doesn't feel like a bet I want to be making. Like, we're drafting Brock Bowers as if he hit his, like, people, I think people are drafting, like, what if his rookie year was his ceiling? Like, sure, it's possible, but we project every other player who erupts as a rookie to continue to do so and improve. Like, to me,
the only pushback I would have to that is that tight end is just different than running back and receiver, where after running back, it's the second probably most rugged position. You have to do so much blocking. You take so many hits that those guys kind of age differently. And they don't age linearly sometimes because he could just bruise his quad in week 2 or 3. Of course, it can happen in any position. I think that is some of the thinking that goes into it at tight end, though, or that tight end career trajectories are just kind of always all over the map. I think Brock Bowers had such an outlier rookie year. You should just assume he's going to be getting better. But I think maybe that is subconsciously what is going on with people. They treat tight end differently. They know running back's the most rugged position, but that's just every single running back. Tight end is this. You're just taking more hits than a wide receiver. You're being asked to do more blocking than even running backs. And it just kind of leads to like really uneven career trajectories. That's the only thing I would say with Brock Bowers.
I think maybe uneven, but I do think like general upward ascent as you age was something that was true for Mark Andrews, for Kittle,
it's
for
true at
Kelsey,
every
for Graham, for Gronk. Like I believe for Graham and for Gronk, both of their second seasons were their best. It was like 1,300 yards for both of them. Might have been the year when they were like both vying for the tight end yardage record, if I remember correctly.
By the way, I took Evan Ingram ahead of Travis Kelce, and I don't know.
It's fine.
I don't know.
We just said all the same guy. Like Mark Andrews even was someone to easily push.
They're
back
all the
against.
same guy except for Evan Ingram, who I'm so excited about pairing up with Sean Payton. I did get a little like I let the coach narrative kind of overtake me there with Evan Ingram.
Andrews got the Mike Evans run out where the injuries around them suddenly in training camp did increase their floors. Whereas otherwise, I think they were quite easy to push back against to begin drafts. And you mentioned the running back tiers, Pat, and I think that's the way I'm going to be handling most drafts is this range. I want to live in this range of wide receiver. I love these guys. I had a hard time deciding between like Emeka Egbuka, Ricky Pearsall among these groups. It's all the same tier. But then I do want to come back. Josh Downs is another one. I do want to come back, though, always into this range of running backs with the Jalen Warrens. I'm going to take Jordan Mason here, for example. Like, that's when I'm willing to dive back in. But I do want to be out on Joe Mixon, Aaron Jones, Caleb Johnson. Like, I want to be out on that range personally.
100%.
Do you, explain your view of those tiers of running backs.
So, by the way, Jordan Mason I've had in this tier for so long. And not in this tier, sorry, in my queue for so long. And was kind of almost clicked draft 2 or 3 different times. I'm glad that you lumped Caleb Johnson in with that, because with Caleb Johnson, I see 2 down running back in a downward spiral offense, like what's probably going to be a super slow paced offense. The Steelers were actually kind of fast paced last year. I'm not counting on that continuing with Aaron Rodgers this year. And he's got the good real life draft capital. But I mean, what if this Jalen Warren is just way better than Caleb Johnson? What if Jalen Warren finally gets more touches this year? Where Caleb Johnson has been one of my least favorite picks as a back end 2 running back. And I think you just laid it out really perfectly. The last kind of question mark guy I like at the low end RB2, high end flex RB3 range is DeAndre Swift, which I haven't wanted to draft DeAndre Swift for like 3 years. But I just look at the Bears running back depth chart and I look at the coaching upgrade. I'm just like, what else are they going to do? Like there is no Roshan Johnson is not a viable plan B. Kyle M, as I call him, the 6th rounder, is not a viable plan B. And DeAndre Swift is like a between the 20s Hall of Famer, like the ultimate fell for it again award player. I just don't know what the plan B is supposed to be for the Bears. And
But Pat, this time it might work for us.
Exactly. This time, not
This time.
might, it is working for us. And yeah, sure, Ben Johnson already oversaw one trade of DeAndre Swift and clearly hates him. But I was so baffled that the Bears did not add another running back.
Did you see the quote from Ben Johnson? Like, what's changed from DeAndre Swift when you used to coach him to now? And he was like, not much, if I'm being honest. Like, he was like, he had some very fluffy, like, oh yeah, I think it's just working every day, which is basically saying like, no, he's the same running back.
Swift was the RB20 in points per game that year, but that was also the year Jamal Williams led the league in rushing touchdowns, which Roschon Johnson played that role ahead of Swift just last year.
Roschon could be the destitute man's Jamal Williams.
Or Kyle Monagai, who was a day 3 pick, forgettable, I know, but did not fumble at all in college. So at least he can earn reps that way by being dependable.
Over Swift. Never mind. It's over.
And 2 quarterback formats also, this range of quarterbacks is going to be not only discussed, but drafted. And so again, I was asking myself, at least at the top here, since I have 2 starters, how would I want to handle this? How long should people be waiting to push it? But remember that Tyler Shuck, Russell Wilson, Daniel Jones, Jalen Milroe, all these guys should be drafted in 2 quarterback formats. So Jackson Dart is my personal favorite, if only because we know the Giants have the toughest schedule in the league in the first 7 weeks. They have their bye appropriately at the back end of the year where Jackson Dart can come in, if he's not starting in that time, for the fantasy playoffs, and he adds some sneaky rushing juice. So I like Dart personally among that QB3 grouping over Aaron Rodgers, but if I can get Geno Smith also, I don't mind Tyler Shuck too. These guys will be drafted.
Okay, thank God Kyle didn't. Should I take Tyler Shuck or should I do the true nuclear option of Kirk Cousins?
Oh, Flacco's on the board. I would take Flacco over Cousins. I don't think
Flacco's not start. Flacco's getting cut before week 1.
He's not getting
Is
cut.
Kenny Pickett's hamstring healed yet?
Great question to ask before you say Flacco gets
he gets back on the field this week. Flacco's getting cut.
If you take Shuck, Kyle is gonna. Well, he has.
I'm taking
Shuck. It doesn't matter. Yeah.
I'm taking with Tua Tagovailoa as my QB2. I need someone I know who will be on the field in September and October. And then if the injury does happen, maybe I can get Zach Wilson. Maybe I can get someone hopefully actually better to fix my Tua injury problems. But I needed some sort of Tua insurance policy, and I took any living, breathing quarterback in Tyler Shuck.
Also, Kyle, you don't necessarily need to since you have 3 quarterbacks, but I do want to stress to everyone that if it works out this way, they can wait, because I think in a regular home league, Anthony Richardson's probably going to go a round or 2 later. People can wait and draft both Richardson and Daniel Jones as their QB3. More than viable, since both have immense rushing upside to add.
And I'm on the clock.
I was going to ask if you noticed.
For a second pick. I think I'm going to time out to someone in my queue, Darnell Mooney, who I still...
Good luck.
Yeah, I still like Mooney, to be honest. Take him. All right, good. They took Mooney for me. How do I get off auto, by the way?
Darnell Mooney, someone dealing with an injury in training camp. Not one I'm worried about just yet. I think, though, Pat, the 2 I am definitely concerned about and dropping in the rankings immensely are Chris Godwin and Joe Mixon. What are your thoughts on those 2 players dropping for people drafting here in the next couple weeks, and anyone else that comes to mind that you are definitely concerned about?
Godwin for sure. Anytime where the story changes, the narrative changes. It changed with Godwin. The team's story with Joe Mixon has been so all over the map that and their actions have spoken so much louder than their words. Of course, signing Nick Chubb, a guy they basically admitted is done. They signed him anyway, gave him $2 million guaranteed anyway in June. Very concerned about that one. I'm not concerned about Mooney just because it seems like the kind of shoulder injury that if it were the regular season, they would give him a shot and he would just keep playing. Thankfully, it's the summer and they can actually rest it and actually let it heal up. And just that's a situation where what is the plan B? The plan B is not Ray McLeod. And Darnell Mooney, I thought he was a really huge value at wide receiver 47 before he got hurt. Now, kind of like the Omarion Hampton, Naji Harris situation, I think his ADP should remain steady, but whereas I think the injury to Naji Harris shored up, Amarian Hampton's ADP. I think the Darnell Mooney injury turned his ADP into, whereas before I thought it was too low. I'm like, yeah, now that actually sounds right for Darnell Mooney. Just because I think he's going to play week 1, but he might have a few like conditioning weeks where he's running a lot of cardio routes, getting back into game shape. But I'm not worried about him being out there, and I'm not worried about Darnell Mooney like losing targets to someone in Falcons training camp, because who's going to step up and earn those targets? I don't think that player's on the roster.
Kyle.
It's Nick Nash, by the way. Nick Nash.
I was going to say it's Kyle Pitts. If it's anyone, it's just Kyle Pitts, which, to be fair, it's not.
We see Kyle here, Jaden Blue, drafted ahead of the other Dallas running backs.
I almost took Jaden Blue instead of Darnell Mooney, John, by the way.
Well, Kyle, tell us about Jaden Blue, because I would imagine it's someone you are in on also ahead of those other two, which also means you were ahead of ADP.
I'm probably not ahead of ADP, but I will be ahead of him, or ahead of the other running backs, especially I think in redraft. Like, what is Miles Sanders or Javonte Williams offering you in redraft? When you were able to churn the waiver wire and consistently find Roschon Johnson actually is the 1B. He's going to get 9 carries and 3 targets a week. That guy is 80% of complete dust committee back Javonte Williams or Miles Sanders. Sanders just happens to be the cheaper one, so he's a little more palatable. I do think, though, with Blue, the fact that he was like 3 injuries away from being a committee back for 1 year at Texas tells me that those guys typically don't go on to see the ball a lot in the NFL. You are hoping that he is something like Nyheim Hines, maybe, who had a really successful PPR career early in his career too, but was never going to be the player who in redraft you were like, this was the guy who defined the season. Like, I think he's a fine click because I can very much see how, one, he's very electric. He's super fast and was an explosive receiver. He gets a lot of credit as being an explosive runner, though he wasn't actually a good breakaway runner in college, which was kind of concerning that he didn't translate his speed into a high percentage of long runs. But he is admittedly a really good receiver, one of the best in the country in yards per route run last year, and comes in the NFL in a spot where he will get the chance to do that early. But I don't know if it's a big hit type of play. Like, I don't really think there's much of a scenario outside of a small window of games where he dominates the backfield work. He couldn't do that in college, and we think he's going to do that in the NFL. The fact that the guys in his backfield suck says that maybe he actually can do it, but that's the only pitch, is like, I don't think he's a great between the tackles runner, but neither is anyone else.
I think that's why the winners are probably Dak Prescott,
I think so too, exactly. Yeah.
And George Pickens. Just tack on.
Don't forget Ryan Flournoy, who I refuse to drop in my Dynasty League.
We are in the range of last round sleepers, and for drafts like this, it's important for everyone to remember this is not best ball, so we don't need to hang on to the Romeo Dobbs of the world, for example, because the guy like on the field running routes, we are strictly looking for upside. We want to start these players, actually, not have bye week fillers unless your roster eventually dictates it that way. So the question everyone always asks, Pat, I'm going to come to you first. Who are some of your favorite last round sleepers?
I feel like it's not a particularly fun year for late round sleepers.
I agree with you.
Receiver.
It's a terrible year.
It's a terrible year. I love Pat Bryant just because of the way, I mean, I know Sean Payton only knows former Saints players, but, you know, immediately comparing Pat Bryant to Michael Thomas, I found interesting, have been unable to shake. I had another receiver. By the way, I'm about to pick on the clock here.
And
I can filibuster my time for you if you want to keep going.
Who did I think they must have just gotten drafted. Oh, Josh Palmer. I was like, I had someone in my queue as a late round sleeper to talk about, and they got drafted.
And by the way, as we talk about opportunity cost, and every player like has its price, like Najee Harris, I was considering him right here as well, because I'm like, at what point do I understand I can just cut him, but also he could be out there? I think this is a healthy range for Najee Harris.
I'm taking my favorite All-Pro, by the way, Kyle. I'm taking him finally. Isaiah Likely. I was deciding between Isaiah Likely and Britton Strange. John Harbaugh saying Isaiah Likely.
All-Pro returner Marvin Mims.
He said he needed an All-Pro season from Isaiah Likely. He's going to get it. Jalen Wright or Braylon Allen? That's the real question. Jalen Wright is actually
sure. I don't have a strong take.
Jalen Wright.
You missed the clear best pick at upside running back was Dylan Sampson, like Brown's potential starter.
I had Sampson in the queue. But yeah, John, a receiver. I mean, part of it is just every year the drafting pool, the drafters, the draftees get more informed, more sophisticated. But yeah, I'm not loving a lot of the late round receivers this year. Just not seeing like the real explode. I mean, maybe one of the Texans' young receivers. maybe like a Panthers receiver is being slept on. It's just not, maybe Jalen Royals, I guess. But I just do not love the late round flyer options at receiver this year.
Your thoughts, Kyle, on last round sleepers. And this does not count because he's not going in the last round. But if for whatever reason, if Trey Harris or Kyle Williams do go later, those are my, Kyle Williams especially, that's one of my favorite picks in home leagues this year.
Yeah, they won't be going late in drafts that I'm in, buddy, because I'm not letting them be late.
I feel like Kyle Williams' ADP is like skyrocketing.
Yeah.
So for me, I agree with Pat. I do not love the late round wide receivers, which like one is like, oh, I guess there's not great wide receiver clicks at the end of the draft. Like, who cares? There's a lot of clicks that aren't great at the end of the draft. But two, it's a reminder that like you can look to the end of your draft and build backwards and think like, do I feel good about getting some upside at wide receiver at the end of the draft? I don't really. I actually do feel good about that at running back. I think especially because it was such a good crop of rookie running backs.
I mean, look at these guys still available right now. I'm having a hard time picking here, actually.
Yeah, I love the rookies. Like Brashard Smith getting run with the ones in a running back pass catching friendly environment. Who do you think has the most running back touchdown catches in a single season in NFL history post-merger? Remember, we were just talking about Brashard Smith. What would that lead you to believe?
Post-merger running back touchdown catches, you said?
Yes.
For a season or a career? What are you saying here?
Talking Chiefs. That should be the...
Well, are you talking to Andy Reid Chief? Or are you talking like a Dick Vermeil Chief? I do not know.
Dale, did you get it?
No.
Is it Jamal Charles?
It's Jerick McKinnon, like 2 years ago.
Oh,
9
really?
catches.
Okay.
There were two guys in like the 50s that had 11, I think.
I don't know what to do here, by the
like
way.
in the past, what would that be, like 60 or so years? Jerick McKinnon. And it wasn't because Jerick McKinnon was an all-star talent. If you remember, he had, quote, dead legs when he went to the Chiefs. It's because he even then was a good pass catcher, to be giving credit to him. But he was a good pass catcher in a system that loves scheming up these gimmick touches for their ancillary players, and he played that role perfectly. And no, look, would you look at that? The Chiefs' day 3 pick at running back is a former wide receiver. Like, and he's getting reps with the one. And in training camp, they're talking about how good his pass catching skills are being utilized already. I don't expect it to hit in week 1, to be clear. But if you're telling me we get a renaissance of any single one of the PPR merchant running back, which I feel like we totally lost. We used to have our James Whites and our Chris Thompsons all the time, and now we don't have that type of player anymore. If that player were ever going to resurface, it would be former wide receiver playing with Andy Reid on a version of the Chiefs that has found no ability to throw deep, that thrives on these checkdowns. So I love Brashard Smith. I like Jarquez Hunter. The team, both GM Les Snead and Sean McVay, talked about
Blake Corum was a one chance guy, and he bombed it.
Man.
They're moving on. Yep.
Yeah, they talked about right after drafting Jarquez Hunter how they liked that having potentially more of a committee approach would give them different elements to their running game. Kyren is good, but the one thing he is not only not really good at, but frankly just horrific at, is producing long runs. He was the least efficient long run producer in the NFL. The Rams last year had the lowest rate of long runs in the league. Like, they need more explosiveness out of their run game, and they talked about Jarquez Hunter being that type of player right out of the gate. So I think there are a handful of rookies that could really carve out small roles early, maybe roles that are like not totally usable for fantasy, but sorry, I just saw the last pick on the board.
Yeah, people are running the draft now, but at least it's the 15th round.
Yeah,
it is the final round. Shout out Tim Tebow and Kadarius Toney. Kyle, Pat, you two are going to bring it home.
The draft has been ruined. Do you want me to ruin the draft with a non-joke pick?
Yeah, do it. Please do it.
It's going to be Keenan Allen.
Oh God, I mean, yeah, you did ruin the draft with a non-joke pick.
I'm going to ruin the draft with a non-joke pick. Quentin Johnston, you ruined the draft more than I did.
Get out of here.
Johnston, are you kidding me?
9 touchdown Quentin is what we call him.
Keenan Allen's going to catch 70 passes for someone. I don't care who. He's my final round pick.
So, lessons learned from the back of the draft, Kyle. Anything you would tell people who have the 11th, 12th pick, an approach in 2 quarterback mock drafts?
Yeah, I think, frankly, the way that Pat played his quarterbacks, if they had been my quarterback too, would have been lovely. I don't love getting to Bo Nix there because I ended up just caving and taking. I don't love anything at this spot. I think I've hit a teardrop, so I went Bo Nix. And it's fine. Like, I think he's a better bet than the guys after him, but it's a pretty marginally better bet. Shooting for that, I think you could group a lot of like McCarthy, Stroud, Love, Lawrence in these like young quarterbacks with very unstable situations, but they're obviously starting all 17 games and the ceiling is sky high. Shooting for that guy as your quarterback too, really nice. And it's the one kind of regret I have of my draft.
And yes, you could have taken, for example, JSN or Rashee Rice and pushed quarterback, since this grouping of quarterbacks with that many on the board, you could have probably assumed one would fall to you. Whereas Pat instead went 2 wide receivers and 2 running backs, and then that group of quarterbacks did not fall, as it comes back to Trevor Lawrence and Tua, both who I like. But Pat, would you prefer to have grabbed one in that 4th round?
I think so. I would have liked Lawrence as my QB2. I do not like him as my QB1. And I probably should have just taken my Justin Fields medicine. I didn't even really consider taking Fields. I don't know why. I should have smashed draft on Fields, or I should have just acknowledged this is a 2 QB league. You're going to probably not feel comfortable about one of your quarterback picks. I thought it was a little too early for Dak Prescott, but I probably should have just taken Dak Prescott. And that is one thing in 2 QB leagues. You do have to accept, you can't wish cast that we're not a 2 QB league. Well, like I'm not taking not a value. Like I'm still just going to keep scooping up value at running back and receiver. In 2 QB leagues, you have to get uncomfortable sometimes. And the reality is they're going to score way more points than any other position. And maybe it's flat in those middle tiers, but you don't want to get caught holding the Tua bag.
It's as we talked about at the beginning of the show. It comes down to predictability in this QB2-3 range. And again, we will know when Jackson Dart starts. So that will be far more predictable. It may not be better, but it will be far more predictable than when Jaden Higgins, Keon Coleman, Chris Godwin, then those guys start. And so that's why I still don't mind measuring them, Tyler Shuck, the list goes on, up to that group of players. Also, when you say uncomfortable, I think, because I felt the same at this end of the draft at 101, I think the ends in 2 quarterback leagues are just going to have to be comfortable, quote unquote, reaching on their second quarterback. Because if you push it too far, we ended up in the opposite ends of the spectrum where I did not push it. I felt like I reached, but at least I got one. And then an uncomfortable tier would have come back to me. Whereas you pushed it, and then you got that uncomfortable grouping of players. So I think everyone should just get familiar with feeling like they're reaching, but actually they are not when they are at the end. Anything else stand out, Kyle, in the middle of the draft, since we took both ends for everyone?
Yeah, I'll circle back to something you briefly mentioned, but I felt was like really strong, was that fall off at wide receiver that happens somewhere in the grouping. It totally depends on your site and ADP, but it's like Egbuka, Jaden Reed, even Matthew Golden in there, both the Packers.
It feels like right around there, yeah.
Right around there is like, I want to be done at wide receiver. Not only am I done searching for like where my weekly starter is going to be, but where's my upside going to come from too. Like if Jaden Reed miraculously plays in 3 wide receiver sets, he's been an absolute baller. There's expansion for his role that could be elite. I don't know if it ever happens. Josh Downs on a per route basis is like 80, like quite literally like 80% of Puka Nacua. He was one of the league leaders in both like target share and targets per route run last year because he just commands the ball when he gets out there. Another guy that like, do they play him on every snap? But once you fall off from that group, it's like Michael Pittman and Darnell Mooney. We're like, sure, they're usable starters, but in a home league where you're a lot of times just hunting, you're like churning the wire and hunting for guys who can be the league winners. I want to be largely focusing on drafting guys who I think are an early bet to maybe be that league winner. And once that group we just talked about is over, I just feel like wide receiver is just done.
Pat, tell the people where they can find your work.
They can find Kyle and I at rotoworld.com. They can find both of us on the Rotoworld Football Show. You guys have maybe the best paid draft guide in the entire industry. We have a free draft guide this year, good yin and yang to each other, so much mutual respect between our sites. So many people who've worked for our sites and both sites over the years. But we got that coming. Player news, of course. Even ETR readers, even ETR writers are reading the Rotoworld player news all month. We're going to keep it super updated. The preseason starting this weekend. We're going to have blurbs on preseason usage. So you got to check it all out on rotoworld.com.
Kyle, your socials for everyone.
At Kyle Tweets Here, I will tweet out all the articles and all the podcasts both Pat and I do, so you can find everything to stay up to date with me at Kyle Tweets Here.
You can find more 2QB content and rankings at establishtherun.com. Until next time, for another mock draft, remember, be a little bit kinder than what's required. We'll see you then. And remember, The early bird bundle at establishtheRun.com remains up for a limited time. Just head to establishtheRun.com and click on that subscribe tab for more info.